Hi there. It's time for our Friday night spiritual insights with Michael Mirdad. Thank you for joining us either for the first time or once again for those of you who are pretty consistent about watching, and thanks for that. Today we're going to talk about women and how they lose themselves. This is partly because of a session that I just finished earlier, and this is a subject that comes up a lot. So hang in there because it's a deep topic, but a very important topic. And of course, during this talk, we'll clear up some things that are, a little extreme one direction or another, because we like to always bring things back to center. But I want to talk about this, the concept of women and losing themselves. So, to begin with, during a session I was doing, there was a client who was, just kind of open to feedback about her life and so on. And she was sharing about some of the things she had gone through in her life, a little bit of embarrassment or a little bit of challenge and so on. But without getting into the details, one thing that I shared with her that just, came to me in that moment, and it may sound really strange to some people, but please bear with me. The closest analogy that I could share with you now mind you, there's different kinds of human beings. There's different kind of women. You can't just stereotype anybody really. But in general, there are women that have had very wonderful lives, empowered lives, supportive lives, and they've had great families and so on. Of course, that exists. I'm not talking about that group in particular. But even if they've had great lives, childhood, and so on, they might still have challenges later on in life. But what I'm leading to is that women, the closest analogy you could really share about the life of a woman, and anybody that thinks, well, Michael's a male, how does he, just be quiet and go with this. I mean, we don't need to get into judgments about who knows what about women, and just go with it. Just trust, because I don't know of anybody, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who knows human beings like I do. I'm not claiming to be the only one. I'm just going to let you know that I don't know of any counselor that's ever worked with tens of thousands of human beings. The average counselor has a roster of a couple dozen people a month they see, or so many dozens. Mine are typically in the hundreds, and it's been for 30, 40 years now. So just lay off the immediate reactions. Those of you who would be tempted to think, how who is he to say? I'm not even interested in that kind of feedback from anybody. Just go on to somebody that is easier to listen to, because I just tend to, fire away, because I tend to really feel confident in what I'm sharing. And I'm going to say this, women, the closest you could say to a woman and the average life of a woman who's been through a lot of stuff is a Vietnam vet for males. If you want to know the life of a lot of women, you would have to understand what it was like for a man to be in Vietnam. And for a man to understand, it would be, for him to understand what a woman's gone through, it would be the same thing. So there's a great analogy between, and a parallel between the two. So please understand that, and please do your best to relax the defenses of the mind and the ego and just tune into this. Because I know, and the reason I'm being kind of firm about this when I say, back off on the judgments and assumptions, is because I know it's not easy for me to say these things, nor maybe easy for you to hear, because it's hard stuff that people have gone through in this life. A Vietnam vet, and I can't speak as though I'm one, but I still understand it and them. A Vietnam vet is someone who was a kid a lot of times. A kid who was 1 minute in high school and the next minute he was in a jungle of a country he never heard of, and asked to kill people and asked to run for his life, and watching friends being murdered. And that's in any war, of course. But it was maybe in some ways easier when they understood who the enemy was. Even that's a strange concept, but at least it was clearer. A war that they didn't understand, that was a lie in many regards, and all that. It was very hard for their minds. And then when they came home, whether it was on leave, vacation, or whether it was from the war, they were abused, spit upon, not listened to. So the analogy is very, very right on. They didn't know how to cope with these things in the war, and they coped by doing drugs. They coped by dissociating, disconnecting, becoming bitter, becoming confused, and so on. It's very, very intense, almost surreal in its very description or definition. Well, for women, life is often that way. And again, I'm just gonna, I just fire away, man, because that's how it comes to me. But I've worked with far more women than most women counselors or teachers could ever even imagine for themselves. So when someone says you have to be a woman to understand that, no, you don't. You don't have to be anything to understand anything. Your consciousness can be open to understanding anything, even things that are not of a first-hand nature. Although that can, give a certain experience and certain voice or understanding. The more we open our consciousness, we can understand anything. And my work with women throughout my life, oh my God, man, I've seen and heard it all. And and so when women have said to me, they've become promiscuous or they've become, I've met people that have literally said that they literally never have been sober when having intimacy, being intimate or having sex. That they've never been with anybody with an ideal or concept of love when they're exchanging. So there's a lot of things I've shared and taught, and sacred sexuality, healing sexual abuse, and so on. And it's been really sometimes quite a challenge, of course. Partly being a male on this topic, and people being so distrustful. So it's and understandably so because of traumas and abuses. So it's been quite surreal, and someday I might write a story of my life to be explaining a little bit more about these things. But the life of a woman, man, you're talking about a goddess, you're talking about a princess. And some people don't like those analogies, and those are usually bitter people, usually women that are very bitter, don't like concepts of women being princesses. They think of it somehow as some gross stereotype. Stop doing that Disneyland version of a woman. Well, they're saying that because they're bitter. Women can be and should be seen, and men as princes, but women as princesses, meaning that you are of a divine origin. Your father and mother are king, queen of the universe, the ultimate creators. So we are princes and princesses in that sense. But also, there's just something so sweet about the concept of a young girl who's, should have been brought up to be loved and honored. I don't mean the kind that's like the only child syndrome where you're sort of, overly spoiled or overly, a little bit conceited, or a little bit I want to be everything to everybody. That's a little bit much. Not that all single children are like that, soul children are like that, but it happens a lot, that syndrome. So I'm talking about nobody in the sense of having a feeling of entitlement. I'm just talking about a deeper level. And on a deeper level, girls have such a sweetness. And I don't mean they have to be sweet and look a certain way and always be thin and pretty. We're not talking about that. It's in the heart. I don't care what size the girl is, she deserves the same. I don't care what color she is. All children deserve love. But they don't all get that, and nurturance, and they don't all get that. In a perfect world, and this is not that perfect world, but we can do our best to make it like a perfect world, heaven on earth, so to speak. In a perfect world, children shouldn't hear and know too much about fear. They shouldn't be, used in divorce settlements. They shouldn't be hearing stuff about jealousies and hatreds between parents. We should really don't have kids, first of all. Don't have kids unless you are healthy enough to treat them healthily, right? Just in case if you can't bring them up in a healthy environment, don't have them. And I did my best to adhere to that rule, but even I screwed up a little bit. But there's no, because I wanted it to be perfect. And, oh man, it broke my heart that I couldn't make it even more perfect. But I did a pretty good job of it. Oh my God, and I'm not just saying today's topic based on what I did for my kids, but I really did try that. When I found a way to buy them little, cardboard houses you could make, or when I could afford more like the the play school kind of things you can put together, little houses, or make it, castle like. I mean, I did those things because I wanted them to feel like they had something. A backyard that was just a new house. It was new, but cheaper kind of house, but it was new in the sense of no yard or anything yet. I made a yard that was in a sense a fantasy world for them. And I think I'm not trying to say that we need to make a false world overly protective of kids, but I think it's great to give them a certain amount of that, the love and the fun, the playfulness, the allowance, but not spoiling, but the allowance to just experience whatever they're about, art and fun and fantasy and play and so on. And a lot of people have not experienced that, obviously. And so my talk today is not about what children should be treated like, but it includes that, because women have a lost princess inside. And, and I've seen the various forms that women have taken, meaning the directions they have taken. It's really quite sad because it is not, it's hard to explain this, it really is, but it is not in the woman's nature to be promiscuous. It's not in her nature. That is a masculine thing, the hit and run, And so when women are told, no, we're allowed to do that too, because we're believing in equality. No, it's not equality. It's just stupid. You just don't know your nature. You forgot your nature. And so you're making excuses and saying, well, this is called equality. We're going to be as stupid as men are and call it equal. And forgive my language, man, but it's just so heartbreaking and frustrating to see this all the time. And I'm fed up with this world and how ridiculous people are. They're dumb enough to let people talk them into this. You're a goddess. You deserve equality. You need to have the right to sleep around just like men. Whoever's saying that is simply someone that has totally screwed up their life. They're heartbroken over it. They've masked it over with as though they know what they're talking about, kind of a demeanor, and they know nothing. They know nothing until they can talk to your innocence, your sweetness, men and women, boys and girls, but still, to that sweetness, the women have to go back and be able to say, you know what? Whatever you were like when you were 5 and 10, this is barring any abuses at that time. Whatever you really know in your heart to be an archetype of a woman, a girl, a goddess, a princess, something sweet, something that knows creativity and goddess and laughter and twirling on your way to the car, that's just the real stuff, And the abuses were dumb, they were ridiculous, they were hurtful, they were selfish, they were not okay. It was never God's will for any human being to be abused. It's really strange as I say these things because I can feel those of you who are watching this already. I can already feel the chills some of you feel in your skin and in your body, and the tears. I mean, I can feel it too. But I can feel it in you. A couple of you might be irritated at what I'm saying, but I can tell that some of you are like viscerally feeling what I'm saying. And it's okay. So let's cry together and let's hang in there. All right, just for a little longer. So women are being brainwashed. And what's really weird is the irony, the sad, ridiculous irony that women are being told by other women that the way to be empowered is to do such and such. But what they're really saying is the way you need to be empowered and not be under the thumb of a man is to be like a man. That's what they're saying. And nobody's calling them on it. Because if you call them on it, they say you're wrong. And they say that, you're not aware of the goddess energy. No, they're wrong. Innocence is right. Innocence is powerful. The strength of this world is a lie. It's false. All they're being is masculine. And I'm able to shoot it down because I see through it. There's not one of you with that kind of lecture speech that would ever get across anything to me. You would never convince me of your little game that you're playing. You're misdirecting people, you're lying to people because you're broken and you had to become masculine to survive in this world or with your family or father, whatever. You're telling other people they have to do it or they're wrong. And I'm sitting here saying, no, your strength is in your innocence. Why? Because your true innocence, and I don't mean your naivete or vulnerability, I don't mean in your susceptibility to trauma, that's the ideal you. I'm talking about before any trauma ever took place in this or any life. There's an innocence where we're connected to God and we are stronger there than any other time. And some people are going to say, well, no, because my innocence, I was abused when I was innocent. That didn't protect me. God, it's really hard to describe, guys, because the part of you that got abused was not the spiritual you. It was the frail, fragile human part. And the truth is, if you would step up and enter your body more and really show up, not being half in your body when you showed up, not being afraid and so on, not carrying karma or whatever, all these things that we've got going on, those things make us, basically food for, this food chain, the abusers. It just makes us susceptible to them. So I'm sorry about that. But the more we can recognize our innocence and nurture that innocence, the better off we're going to be. It's next to impossible because the world doesn't allow it. But the more of us that really understand it and nurture that in each other and in ourselves, then at least we will turn ourselves around. We may not turn the world around starting this second, but it'll happen over time. But somebody's got to step up. I've done talks where I teach, people should say no to certain things in this world. Well, this is one of them that becomes a talk all by itself. Say no to the hyper-feminist. Now, when I say feminist, there's the one version of that. One definition of that would be someone that simply believes in equal rights for women and men. That's fine. I'm not saying anything is a problem with that. I'm talking about angry women feminists that want to fight and complain about everything. That's hyper-feminism. Just like hyper-chauvinism is completely wrong. Men are better, forget all that. The fight, the anger already gives them away. Don't become a student of an angry person. A student meaning literally or metaphorically. Don't become the student, the recipient of that stuff. Step up. I've seen, there's a saying, misery loves company. And that's what they're doing. They're looking for other people and they're trying to say, I need you to be angry like me so that I don't feel so messed up. So they're trying to turn you, so to speak. Just like a fundamental Christian wants to convert somebody who's more liberal about their spirituality, they're going to shame them and guilt them, and it's the same for anything. And this is just another version of that. So women have gone into a state of shock, and and then they go into the being abused, and then it goes into Me Too and all these movements, and some of it's legitimate and some of it's not, because some of it becomes a bandwagon where people I want to just become like everybody else. Look, you're not going to heal just by joining a group or a movement of how to hate another group of people. You're going to find that strength when you go back to your innocence and saying, wait a minute, what I'm going to do is, first of all, refuse to hate anybody, male or female, whatever it happens to be. Refuse to hate anybody. And when I say hate, I mean even buying into reasons to be angry and hurtful about things. Then you're going to become masculine. I don't mean healthy male. I mean the hyper-masculine that controls. So don't become part of the military world. Don't become part of the political world. I don't mean that just literally. I mean don't become hyper-masculine, because then you're like the very things you didn't like in the first place. There's a saying, you become what you hate. Please don't do that. And I know, what am I telling you? What's the alternative? Am I telling you just to, put on little girl dresses and jellies? You remember those? The girls would wear the little clear, like plastic shoes, and the saddle, what do they call them? The saddle leggings, with the little strap that goes under your feet, like little girls used to wear, and still do maybe. I think, just to be sweet God, just to get back to being sweet and playful, and don't drug yourself. Don't drink yourself, to death. Don't alter yourself all the time. Don't sleep around because friends tell you. When friends say, what you need, they're saying, men would say it. Now women could say it. Why? Because they're equals, equally stupid. So they would say, girlfriends would say, you need to get laid. Just respond and say, and you need a therapist. You need to get some help. But girls usually give into it. Some of them don't. But the ones that don't give into it sit around thinking, is there something wrong with me? No, there's nothing wrong with you when you saw through or see through the advice that comes from hurt. It's never something wrong with you. You just see through it. Now, the hard part is dealing with peer pressure, because they're going to be coaxing you, come on, you got to step up, you're old, don't buy into that old-fashioned crap about women aren't allowed to sleep around. The reason women were not allowed to sleep around, in the old saying, was, masculine world was doing this and that and trying to paint a certain picture. But it was also because they knew in their nature that it was not appropriate. It was not, the princess never just sells herself. She doesn't bargain. She doesn't give herself away. So it's not just trying to comply with male image of women. Although that's there. That's a projection of theirs. But it's not about that. You're being lied to when you're told to be sweet and innocent for the sake of men. I want a virgin, really find one, So the men that are looking for that, that's not going to happen. So women are trying to be that all those years. And if they weren't that, they were just shamed. I mean, scarlet letter and all. It was just sick the way it was done. So you think that doing the opposite was then the answer. And no, that was the other lie. They're both lies. One, you're listening to men lie to you about how to be. The other is you're listening to masculine women telling you how to be. See? And it's all a lie. Somewhere in between. Your nature's there, guys, girls. Okay? The nature's there. In Tantra, in an old tradition, a sacred tradition of Tantra, sacred sexuality, they say women are naturally tantric, not men. Women are naturally tantric because in nature, by nature, they're not just their souls, their bodies actually know what sacred sexuality is. And that's why a woman's body takes a while to warm up. Of course, then plenty of movies came out and plenty of stories and articles and friends' testimonials saying, oh, I just got into a hot sex thing last night. We just humped, and fast and furious. It's nice. Good for you. It's just that a woman's body will actually register that as trauma. As a trauma, like a rape, even though she thinks she's having a great time. She's heating up. Yeah, she's getting all hot and heavy and sometimes, And the thing is, it's just contrary to her nature. It's contrary to her nature. That doesn't mean she's not allowed to get hot and heavy. It's just that without love, without the heart, it's never organic for a woman. You could say there might be an exception to the rule once in a blue moon, but for the most part, a woman's body already knows what it needs, which is warmed up. Even porn stars, and I've worked with many and interviewed many, and over the years, way back in the late 80s, I think it was, early 90s, I did a lot of work with them. And then for several years, it was much leaner with just here and there clients and strippers and, escorts, and over the years, just lots of that. And then in the 2000s, worked with another group of them, and of particularly porn stars. And the thing is, even they say it's all an act 90-something% of the time. What they're what they're doing, like, oh yeah, it's just an act. They do know that, they say that. But they also say one of the things they hate most about the males that they work with in the industry, the industry, that's what they call it, is men that do not help prepare them first, because they're not supposed to prepare. It's like, ready, action, just do it. And they're not being honored, but they're being told, just, hey, it's just an act anyway. Just pretend. You're just being filmed, you're faking it, you're acting, so get to it. Those women, and every time a woman does something like that, when she does a one night stand and when she becomes a little promiscuous, her body is actually numbing. A man's doesn't, because his brain is wired, in a sense, to not care. It's the hunt, it's the go. Just like his genitals are external, they're go. They point, they go. The woman's is welcoming something in. Well, welcoming is not a word that's synonymous with many women's experiences anymore. Instead, it's you just do it. When a woman says, I'm going to do this to show my ex-boyfriend, something or other. I'm going to do it to show my family that I have my own rights, or it's to prove, to show. It has very little to do with love. Even people that have had decent experiences with first time or sometime sexual experiences, decent experiences, sometimes it was still based on a false version of love. Like, I just want to feel loved. That sort of thing, and they gave themselves away. There needs to be a correction in mind, body, and soul, and I would love to tell you, we have to tell the males to do this differently. That's I do that, I say that, but honestly, and I know guys are watching, so please pay attention to this. But it's really going to be the women's job. And it's a good job. It's not a job like I'm dumping it on you. I'm saying you have the power to do this. Men have been far too long programmed from an insensitive place. Not every man is insensitive, of course, but they're just, it's such a program, such a long-term program. It's going to be easier for women just to say, don't even think about it. In Tantra, they call it the gates. The upper gate, the lower gate. And the upper gate is here, the lower gate, the genitals. And the upper gate needs to be knocked on before it opens. Knocked on is just a metaphor. It means like invite, say hello first and kiss here before I open my mouth. People are taught just to make out. And sometimes just to go for genitals, and it's like, no, meet me here. Don't even think about anything else. Meet me here. But there's another gate, and it's the heart. If you cannot open my heart, I'm not opening my legs. And women instead, and because they get pissed off, and the women are like, how, men, and they keep expecting, stop putting out. Stop saying, okay, well then I won't even have a guy. Oh, that's a good philosophy. That if I don't give in, I won't have one. Great affirmation. How's that working for you? Like, come on. I know it's hard to hear this, but it's better to go without bargaining, settling. Go without a guy or sex or partner or whatever. Go without if it means you have to bargain. I think that you're better off, and this isn't just like a hetero conversation here. This could be gay or straight as well, gay or whatever, but male, female version, whatever. But the idea is that I believe that if a person said, I've gone without for a few years now because I started having a greater integrity. It is tempting for us to believe. We think this about God. Well, I'm spiritual now, so I don't have a lot of money. See, we have a program around that. We actually think you can't have God and whatever else in this world. You can't have God and sex. You can't have God, and that's not true. God is supposed to be brought into everything we do so that we can be prosperous and sensual and sexy and, whatever else, creative and so on. But in this world, we're very challenged with some of these areas. And one of the things I'm leading to is just the idea that going without is a problem. I personally believe that if you say, well, God, I just, haven't even had anything, and I've gone, because you're still thinking absolute. There's a lot of problems with that thought, mind you. The whole bit about I go without. You don't have to go without. You really don't. But it's better to go without than to give in, bargain like. But again, I believe if that's the case, you can say to a girlfriend, a friend, male or female, gay or straight, could we snuggle a little bit? I'd just love some affection. I remember being on tour once, and there was this gal. Oh, she was so struggling with no partner and just so frustrated about it all. And I mean, I knew her fairly well, just having taught at her spiritual center for many times. And I remember doing the same thing, in fact, for a minister of a church once. Frustrated, no relationship, but spiritual leader, and God, what do? I can't really just date somebody in the congregation, so I'm going without. And in a couple of these different cases, I remember just saying, well, here, I don't know what led to it being a TV or a movie they wanted to watch, but I was there and they said, I said, here, turn on your movie, turn on whatever. And they just laid on the couch and I laid behind them and just held them and they watched their movie. I was just holding space for them, giving them like a safe male kind of an energy. Now, I know sometimes there's going to be people out there going, oh, that's inappropriate. Well, I don't really care what you think about that sort of thing because you wouldn't understand it. Because, to twisted minds, all things are twisted, and to pure minds, all things are pure. That's in the Bible. It's not just me picking on you. It's just, get your mind out of a gutter place. Just understand people can have integrity and share affection without any agendas. But I did do that. I've tried to many times in my life comply with what people were looking for and help them. Not I don't think overboard and too often, but just, whether it was a discount on a class or a smile or a little extra time in a talk or conversation. I just feel it's really helpful to gift people what we can in this world. And so, but I do remember a couple of times doing things like that. And in those few cases, I can remember a third one just popped into mind. In 3 out of 3 cases, one in three completely different ends of the country and corners of the country of the United States. And in all situations of those that popped into my mind immediately, they ended up in long-term partnerships shortly after. I remember one of them went on with a partnership and a child, and just it just gave them like a safe kind of a space. Like, okay, well, now I had that, a bridge, like a affection, instead of where's the one and only everything. You can have something right here. Have it with a friend, I've known people that have taken my advice and shared time with girls that shared time with gay friends of theirs because the guys were safe and willing to say, oh, yeah, I mean, there's not a big interest of mine in you, so I'd be happy to hold you in love and friendship. I think it's just so cool. A lot of people would think I'm really nuts to think that, but I think it's just so beautiful. And the times they've told me, I've never heard of anybody say it was horrible and traumatic. I just think it was great when the minds were in the right place. So I just, as I'm going to start wrapping up, I just think it's important to recognize that, sort of what I started off with, there's an innocence in us, and young girls represent our soul. It's a symbol of our soul. That's why the myth of Sophia, little Sophia, who left her father's kingdom, which is our soul. It's not males or females. It's our soul. She left her father's kingdom, came to, went on a journey along, meaning through the universe, and she found a place to live, meaning Earth, and there she was traumatized and abused. And when she forgot her divine origin. She forgot that she's still a princess. She thought she became the, wounded one. She identified with wounding. She identified with shame. And so she didn't want to go home to her father's kingdom because now she had been soiled and shamed. And then that's the soul, the human soul. And in the story, her brother came looking for her. He said, I'm going to go looking for her, meaning that's like Christ, not just Jesus, Christ as a consciousness, but Jesus too, said, I'm going to go looking for them, and came and became the Savior. Some people make that into a feminist thing again. Why is the guy that, who cares? There's symbols. Christ has no gender, God has no gender, so just don't be ridiculous. It's just a story that there's a kingdom and a child leaves, forget the gender, a child left the kingdom and its sibling missed it and went looking for it. The sibling represents the part of it that didn't get wounded, and there's a part that seems like it did get wounded. When it did, it identified with that wounding and then stayed stuck and felt ashamed and I'm undeserving. I can't bounce back. I can't go home. I've now been shamed. And I've known a lot of kids that have gone through that. I've known children and I've known adults that when they were children they were abused, and when that happened, it changed their relationship, even with loving parents they may have had. It changed their relationship because they couldn't bring home. There's a shame, even if they didn't do anything, it was done to them. There's a shame. I did something naughty and you're not going to love me anymore. When in fact, and of course they also sometimes say, I don't want you to I don't want to upset my parents. I don't want them to call the police. Sometimes they're developed and cognitive enough to know those kinds of things can happen. But it's just all so sad because it's the ego inside of a child saying, now you're dirty. Now nobody likes you anymore. Just like, the story Pinocchio, and you have the fox kind of being all sly, and I think it was a fox in the story that was, sort of telling Pinocchio, you're naughty, you're bad, you're this, you're that, trying to get him off center. And he kept listening to that voice, and that voice is that of the ego. So you and I need to do things differently. And I am urging, I will not make it my life's purpose. I will try not to stay awake nights hoping that you'll listen to this, because I don't want to get too attached to the idea, but I do know what's right and in this situation. And what's right is, don't give in to angry women or men, controlling men. Just don't. Don't give in and become the thing they tried to make you become. I'm definitely sorry that we, males, world, humans, have done anything to each other and to you. It's sad and it's inappropriate and all that, but we have to become born again. And Jesus says you must become his children. It has a lot of meanings, but along this context, it's what I'm talking about. And you have to be born again. It means somewhat the same. That which is born of the flesh is flesh. That which is born of the Spirit is spirit. And we need to become born of the Spirit. Become innocent again. If you succumb to promiscuity and drugging yourself and, well, I'm allowed to, man, I'm empowered, and now I can just sleep around and one night stands like men, and because we're equal. I mean, if you don't see how ridiculous that is already, try to just imagine if you die a day after a good bout of acting like that, how has it taken you closer to heaven, consciousness? On the other hand, if you say, no more, a person has to earn the right to touch me. And I have to earn the right to touch them. But they have to earn the right to touch me. And they have to knock at this gate before they reach the other gate. They have to open my heart before I open my body. And you die after coming to that conclusion, I think you're a better person. I think you're more evolved. And I don't even think you may not even have to incarnate again. Because if you really get what I just said, it's not just getting a small gift of some kind. It's huge. It means I understand my value spiritually as well as humanly. So it's not just you're finding your life again is not coming just from fighting for something. Me too, and fighting. Be careful not to become part of the fight, because the fight is a masculine trait. That doesn't mean women aren't allowed to fight, but it's a different form. When a woman fights, if she's truly in her female power, she understands there's a knowingness in her. It's not an action she has to always take. There's a knowingness. It's just this spiritual maturity that a woman is capable of having. A male too, if he accesses that feminine side of himself. But our greatest strength is in our innocence and in our childlike consciousness. It's not in our cunning and in our human brilliance and physical strength and prowess. It's not. It's what the world tells us it's in. So women that want to become lawyers, it's hard for them to just remain in their sweet princess and be a lawyer or an accountant or anything that has to answer to things and fight for things. Ever so often, I mean, ever so often, rather, God, all too often, it's kind of weird to witness because they become confused and hardened in some ways. It's like, well, they won't take me seriously if I don't act like them. And then after a while, they become what they acted like because we form habits and then habits form us. And the next thing we know, where did I go? I lost myself. So we've got to find ourselves again. We've got to bounce back and we've got to find our innocence. But please, no. Say no. Don't say me too. Say no. Don't let it be you too. Don't just fight about what happened. Choose differently starting now. Don't just fight. Don't just scream. Don't just complain. And it's interesting because I've seen and heard of some women who said, yeah, I don't agree with that whole thing about this and that, feminism or fight me too and all those things, a lot of those things. Even in politics, women and equal rights. And well, I'm not putting down equality. I'm talking about the ones that make it a real major hatred fight. And women that I've known who have had the strength, which is the real strength, to say online, friends, or in Facebook groups and things, gosh, I don't know about this and it feels a little too over the top and too angry. They just get slammed by women who are claiming to be empowered. And, and here they're like, oh, did I do something wrong? No, you were right. But you don't know how to speak up against bitches, bitchy people, aggressive people. A bitch is not a strong woman. A bitch is a masculine woman. A strong woman doesn't hate you and doesn't make you wrong and shame you for having your own thoughts and opinions about something. So we don't need bitchiness from men or women. We don't need control, and we don't need to be used by them sexually. But also stop giving in to them. Don't just blame them. Stop giving in. Giving in. If I were a woman and in the position of such things, I'm not speaking about some truly dangerous situations. I mean, that's a horrible thing for a woman to have to endure, or child. I'm talking about when, some women have said a man, we were on a date and they took a little too much advantage. I understand that, and that's not okay for them to do that. But I'm not telling you to acquiesce, be your little princess and just let it happen. Oh, no. You can be a princess because it's a consciousness. I'm a holy child of God. And when they pursue, you say, hold it. Do you realize this is not going to happen? You don't have to succumb and check out and be abused or taken advantage of in a date, kind of thing, or just shamed with your girlfriends. I've known girls who have said, my first time or my 10th time or whatever it was, I didn't want to do it, but my friends were like, oh yeah, you take that corner of the room, we'll take this corner, we'll all have a party. That's not at all sacred. That's not love, and it's not nature to a woman's heart. It's contrary. Do anything contrary to your nature, and you are numbing yourself. You're abusing yourself, with or without drugs and alcohol. Your body becomes numb. The yoni, the vagina, the yoni, the sacred space. It's in Sanskrit. It's called yoni, and it means sacred space. The sacred space, the womb of a woman, becomes actually numbed when she's having anyone making contact with it in any form, without the gates being opened first and the heart being one of them. Without that natural blossoming, unfolding. That's what I meant by Tantra saying the woman is more naturally tantric because she takes time to warm up. What a drag. Why? I wasn't quite prepared. I didn't get turned on fast enough, so I never had an orgasm and that sort of thing. They're right. It shouldn't take such a quick kind of an experience. That whole quick release thing is a hyper-masculine concept. So slow down. Well, my partner's not really into that. Change partners, I mean, what do I have to say, to really get it across? Well, I don't want to go without. Then don't. And have what you have and go numb and come back and do it again in another life or your 50th relationship or your 150th sexual partner. Do what you want to do. I'm only sharing how this actually works. And a woman's body is naturally tantric, which means it naturally needs to warm up. When warmed up properly, as the Taoists say, the water gets boiling. She is like water, and it needs to get boiling. A man is too much like fire, and he burns himself out. He needs to gently, slowly put the wood in the fire, and get the water boiling so that the two are heating up properly together at the same time. But that's not how it's done. And we could say men need to change. Men need to change. I could do a lecture like that, and then I'm going to sound like one of the angry people again. And I don't have to, because I already know the truth of this. And that is, if they're not listening, then it's up to you, girls. You got to just say no. I'm a princess. I'm God's holy child. And if you want to engage here, you have to become a prince. And it sounds like, oh my God, that's such fantasy and that's old fashioned. No, it's not old fashioned. It's right and it's real. You've just, lost belief in it and had to excuse yourself in some way to pretend it's no longer valid. It is valid. And I'm not saying we can't be playful and sexy and sometimes, have quickies and all that's fine as long as you're with a prince, meaning not a perfect partner, but someone who has love and respect, someone who can work at your pace and meet you at your own level, and that you work symbiotically. When someone, all the sayings, I nailed a girl, I'm going to do you. What is that? I mean, just think about these connotations. You're not going to do anybody. That's what I would say. You want to do somebody, go do yourself, hate to be so blunt about it, but I mean, it's right. And if I were a gal and, a guy were doing, I would just say, what you're doing is not going to happen. You do understand that. Oh yeah, you want to know. I'm telling you no, it's not going to happen. Now, if I have to say no again, you're going to regret it. And they would. They would lose sight because my thumbs would be in their eye sockets. I would do what I need to do to make myself clear. Or I would go so far as to, I'm not, trying to endorse violence. I'm making a point, if you can get that. I've known some of you have shared, husbands force you and husbands do this and that. They just need to hear you convey a concept. I'm not saying literally do, but a concept of, okay, you heard me say no. You're forcing. You do understand you're forcing this right now. You're actually raping me. You're forcing this. So if this even happens, which I'm saying no to, if this even happens, I will not be here tomorrow. And if I were, you'd be missing a penis, because tonight while you're sleeping, I'll bob at you. That's the old saying, right? That means, snip. And so I don't mean violence and I don't mean literal, but it's a concept that it's not going to happen. It's not okay, and it will not happen. And if it does, everything's going to change for you. This will be over. You're conveying with an energy, not going to happen. It's not an option. And you make that clear to your partners and or dates or whatever. And that's what they need to hear. Clarity. You're teaching them. You're not being bad or bitchy. You're teaching. You're saying, I'm letting you know that this is the real world, the real one, where children of God honor each other and we can be sexy. Oh my God. If you and I are connecting, baby, right on. We're going to have it, baby. We're going to have a great time. We're going to have sexiness, and I know how to love and love make. And wow, you can embody all that just with the right people, not unhealthy people. So I think it's great, and in the years I taught Tantra and sacred sexuality, oh my God, I love seeing the transformation in gals there. The laughter and the playfulness. Part of that that workshop I once did, 5-day intensives, part of it was about embracing, we called it playfulness. There was a healing part, an educational part, a sensual part. There were different parts of the tantric workshops or sacred sexuality workshops. But one part was a playfulness, childlike playfulness, body painting and laughter and giddiness. And, it was beautiful. So it was kept back to the innocence. And it was great to see people be able to embrace that. And in a sense, in that portion of the workshop, doing nothing different than a bunch of 6-month-olds would do, 1-year-olds would do. They wouldn't care about the body and body parts. They were acting as children and just having fun and playing games and, just keeping things really light and simple and innocent. And I think there's a beauty to that. And I think that that's also healthy if you do that in your own homes and or with your own partners or with friends, but in a healthy way. Don't succumb to the stuff that the world tells you you're supposed to be doing. The porn world is a lie. The cinematic world that started, various times in history, but it definitely started cooking in the 80s, 90s, where they started just showing women really acting out sexually. And, there were a lot of people chewing their nails going, oh my God, we're allowed to be like that. And then they went overboard with it. And it meant promiscuity and it meant becoming like men. And I knew that and said it all along, but people just didn't want to hear it. They thought, yeah, he's old fashioned. And only in a healthy way am I. And so the cinema taught and people listened, people watched, people accepted that preaching, teaching that this is how women are supposed to be. And they started becoming it. And then it meant a lot of women shifted from not only being abused by a parent, let's say, a child abuse. It's one thing to be abused by others. So women shifted from being abused once in a while, in their lives here and there, some women, to actually abusing themselves. Because when you started acting out like men, you were responsible. You're the one who messed up. You can't say they did this to me. You bought into that. You bit the apple, so to speak, and took the illusion on and abused yourself. Whether it was once or 100 times, it doesn't matter. When you were with someone that wasn't right for you, I could just say big deal. Men do that. No. Women are wired differently. They're sensitive that way. Their body and mind and heart and soul says, we do not want to give in. The male is saying, on the hunt, I'm going. And that. I'm not justifying it at all, because healthiness is always going to be love-based. But the men are wired to do one particular thing. Women are wired another, and they're trying to be like men, which means contrary to their nature. And it's not a love-based, thing that they're doing. So the women symbolize our soul. Yes, especially little girls, but women symbolize our soul. And when women became like men, we lost everything to a whole new level. You hear people saying women are going to be a part of our awakening. Oh, great. Find them. Find the ones that haven't abused themselves. And then maybe we'll be able to listen to them teachers, those female teachers, goddesses that are going to change the planet. Hell no. They've all become men, and that hasn't helped. So if you want to make a difference and you want to see the feminine make a difference, then become feminine. The divine feminine, become one, instead of being masculine and calling it divine feminine. Take care, man. And if you don't, our souls, symbolically, our souls have sunk to a new level of self-abuse, which means we collectively have decided not to love ourselves. Take good care. I'm not trying to shame you for having made those decisions. I'm saying see through it, decide whether it was friends coaxing you, family members coaxing you to go in that direction, or yourself. Just see through it and say, got it. No more. Ain't happening. I totally get it. God loves me and has asked me to love myself. And I'm tempted to go now into being a born-again virgin. I'm tempted to go into being, totally abstinent. And no. That's being a nun, and all that. And some of you have already done that in lifetimes. You're not asked to go to that extreme, but start off with a little bit of fasting. Fast from the sex and the hypersex. Slow it down. Slow it down. I've had a couple of very passionate friends or intimate friends, and I would say, slow down, relax. And it was very hard for them to do that because that was their nature. They got kind of that intensity inside of them, and they thought that's what I'm supposed to do, right? And guys have liked that, and guys want, not here. Slow it down. If you want to spend some time, slow it down. And the speeding up and passion can happen, but you never lose the witness, the center. You don't get caught in and hooked by the passion, the intensity, the heat. That's why we say somebody's in heat. I don't want to be in heat. I don't want to be cold. I want to be warm. Nice and comfortable warm, right? So think about that. And if I'm saying anything that has been confusing or that you thought was in any way hurtful or picking on you, please email me and let me know so I can explain and so forth, because that's not at all what I've been saying at all here. And, I encourage you to love and take care of yourselves. And it doesn't matter if you've, like I said, been with one partner or 1,000 partners. I'm just talking about where you go from here. Just say, that's it. Die of the old self. Every one of us has made mistakes. I could have just 3 partners in my life, and all 3 could be a major mistake. I could have 30, and all 30 could have been loving, well thought out, paced relationships, believe it or not. So it's just a matter of be true to your soul, be true to your real self, be true to your divine self, be born again, and then let's try to meet each other in a new place. We could all have such splendid friendships, intimate friendships with each other, with ourselves, with friends, with whomever, lovers and so on, if people could grow up and be more responsible. But there's such terrible communication, a lack of clarity and honesty, agendas that people are having, and and so on and so on, that just makes it all so unsafe for us to say, well, I want to go to that new version Michael's talking about. But why would you want to go there if there's no great representation of it? So somebody's got to start the change. Somebody's got to be part of the change before we can step into a changed world. So, maybe you can be one of 1,000 or 1 of 1,000,000 of us that start insisting on this new way. So thank you for listening. And even though I shut down those that would say a male can't, I don't care about that story. I don't agree with that at all. Even though I said that, I do understand why you would think that. I do understand why you'd think, well, a woman needs to say this, or it doesn't make sense, or it can't be true. No, it can be a man. Just don't be an angry woman, and you could understand that. And don't be an angry man. Just get to your soul, and you'll hear that what I'm saying is right. It's the truth. So there's no gender in spirit, guys. And if I'm being in spirit, then there's no gender from me or to you, and none needs to be from you to me. Let all that go when you're learning and experiencing something new in consciousness. Yeah, you can still be a gender, of course, but let that go when you're exchanging in consciousness, learning and so forth. Don't believe in your life in races and genders and superior and inferior, and don't fight to fix any of it. Be the change you want to see in the world. Don't fight for feminism, and don't fight for chauvinism. Don't fight for any. Don't fight against them. Be the change. Don't tell me what I need to do. Just show me. Be that change. So thank you for listening. Peace be with all of you. Bye-bye.